The greatest loneliness is not when you are alone, but when you are in a relationship where the other person is always distant. Carl Jung. Have you ever been here? You love someone with all your heart. At first, they made you feel chosen, special, like you truly mattered. But over time, they grew distant. The text slowed down. The affection faded. And one day, they disappeared completely, leaving you with vague lines like, "I'm just not ready," or "You deserve someone better." You're stunned. You're heartbroken. And then you start asking yourself, what did I do wrong? If I just loved harder, waited longer, would they have stayed? The truth is, this isn't just your story. It's a repeating pattern in countless modern relationships, especially with those who carry a dismissive avoidant attachment style. They crave love, but they fear being trapped. They want closeness, but when you get close, they pull away. The irony is that the harder you try to prove your worth, the more you chase, the further you drift from the strong, independent version of yourself that attracted them in the first place. And so you get stuck in a painful cycle. Love, anxiety, chasing, heartbreak. This hook isn't about teaching you how to win an avoidant back. It's about showing you the truth. You can't save them with your love, but you can save yourself by returning to independence, self-respect, and maturity in love. On the Avoidant Attachment subreddit, an avoidant once wrote a secret formula to make someone like them fall in love. At first glance, it reads like satire, a self-mocking joke. But if you look closely, hidden between the lines is a deep truth about how avoidants really work. The formula says that to make an avoidant fall in love, you must do 5 things. Always provide exciting, extraordinary experiences. You have to shine, be brilliant, creative, and in some ways better than them. Novelty and uniqueness attract them, while shielding them from the responsibility of nurturing a stable, ordinary bond. Always be busy, hard to pin down. You must have a packed schedule, an independent life, or a vibrant world where they are never the sole focus. This scarcity of your presence actually makes them curious and sparks the chase. Still initiate contact, but selectively. Avoidants rarely reach out first, so paradoxically, you must initiate. But it has to be on your terms, with timing and intention. This controlled initiation disrupts their expectation that you'll always be the one chasing. No commitments, no DTR, define the relationship, no future plans, no meeting families, no pressure for words of affirmation. This is their safe zone, connection without obligation. Understand their affection needs without them saying. This sounds unreasonable, but it reflects how many avoidants expect you to just know because they struggle to voice emotions themselves. At first, this formula sounds absurd, even laughable. But that absurdity mirrors the paradox within the avoidant psyche. They crave love but fear it. They want closeness but dread being engulfed. They're drawn to those who are strong, independent, and don't need them to survive, because that mix of security and unpredictability feels both safe and intriguing. Read between the lines and you see the core truth. Avoidants are drawn to independence, mystery, and people who don't apply emotional pressure. They fear too much closeness, yet find attraction in those who balance intimacy with freedom. And here's where many partners of avoidance fall into the trap. In real relationships, when we love someone, our instinct is to move closer, to seek reassurance, commitment, and certainty. But those very natural desires trigger the avoidant's fear and push them away. The more you love, the closer you move. The closer you move, the further they retreat. And the cycle leaves you feeling like you're never enough. That's why this so-called joke formula, though satirical, contains a brutal truth. To hold on to an avoidant, you must sacrifice the very fundamentals of healthy love, closeness, reassurance, commitment, which leads us to the big question. Is that really love, or just a psychological game with no end? Crisis. From secure to anxious. If in the previous section we saw how the so-called joke formula reveals the paradox of the avoidant, here we confront a more painful truth. You, the person who once entered the relationship confident and balanced, slowly become the anxious, clingy, desperate version of yourself. Think about it. You used to be steady. You had your job, friends, passions. You didn't need anyone to feel whole. And that independence was what drew them to you in the first place. But as the relationship unfolded, distance crept in, short replies, long silences, last-minute cancellations, vague promises about the future. At first, you explained it away. They must be busy. Maybe I'm overreacting. But as the pattern repeated, doubts set in. And instead of standing firm in your independence, you shifted into anxiety. You started waiting by the phone, checking messages dozens of times a day, clinging to every little sign that they still cared. And when nothing came, you panicked, reaching out, asking, pushing for reassurance. In those moments, you no longer looked like the confident, unpredictable person they were drawn to. You became clingy, anxious, predictable, the exact version that makes avoidance retreat even further. They began saying things like, "You're too sensitive. I can't handle the drama. This isn't my problem. It's yours." And you believed them. You started blaming yourself. Maybe I really am too much. If I can just be calmer, quieter, they'll stay. This is where you fall into gaslighting, not always intentional, but born from their inability to face emotions, which leaves you believing you're the burden. The truth is, your needs, closeness, commitment, clarity are completely normal in a healthy relationship. Mikulincer and Shaver, 2007, call this the anxious avoidant dance. The more the anxious partner seeks reassurance, the more the avoidant feels smothered. The polarity creates exhaustion on both sides, trapping both in a loop. The danger is that the harder you try to prove your worth by chasing, the further you drift from the version of yourself that was once attractive. You become emotionally dependent, off balance, and reliant on their reactions to define your self-worth. When they leave, you're lost. What did I do wrong? When they return with vague texts, you ignite with hope. Maybe this time it's different. When they withdraw again, you collapse into despair. The cycle repeats, and each round chips away more of your belief in yourself. So what's really happening? The answer is, your initial security has been eroded by their insecurity. You are not wrong for wanting stability. You are not too much. But loving an avoidant without boundaries drags you into a spiral that makes you unrecognizable, even to yourself. In the last section, we saw how someone who began as secure can spiral into anxiety, trapped in the endless chase withdrawal cycle. To go deeper, we need to return to the roots of attachment theory, to John Bowlby, the father of this field. In the 1942nd, Bowlby observed children separated from their parents during and after World War II. He found that separation didn't just make a child cry for a while and then move on. Instead, they went through 3 clear stages: protest to despair to detachment. In the protest stage, the child cries, clings, and does everything possible to bring the parent back. When unmet, they enter despair, quiet, withdrawn, visibly sad, though still hurting deeply inside. Finally, if separation continues, they move into detachment, appearing fine, even indifferent when the parent returns. But in reality, this calm is an emotional freeze, a defense mechanism. Avoidants as adults replay the same cycle. At first, they may still care, still show interest, but as closeness brings pressure, they retreat. Eventually, they switch off, looking emotionless. In truth, they're not okay, they're frozen to survive. The key insight: detachment isn't genuine indifference, it's self-protection. They build distance, not because they don't care, but because closeness triggers fears of losing control, not being enough, or getting hurt. But Bowlby's work also revealed something intriguing. When detachment is disrupted by an unexpected shock, the cycle can shift. For example, when you stop waiting, when you truly move on, build your own life, and thrive without them, in that moment, the avoidance attachment system can suddenly reactivate. They realize your presence is no longer guaranteed. The person they assumed would always stay, always try, is now free, happy, and out of reach. This creates scarcity, a real fear of loss, and paradoxically, that's often when they circle back, seeking reconnection. Of course, this doesn't mean you should pretend to move on as a manipulation tactic. The power lies in genuinely choosing yourself. When you build a life you're proud of, not to lure them, but to heal yourself, your energy shifts. And in that transformation, you become magnetic again. Not because you're chasing, but because you no longer need them to feel whole. From Bowlby's lesson, it becomes clear the avoidance cycle cannot be broken by loving harder, chasing longer, or sacrificing more. In fact, the opposite is true. The more you pursue, the more you lose yourself. That's why the solution isn't about changing them, it's about changing you. You cannot love an avoidant into healing. You cannot text enough, wait long enough, or analyze deeply enough for them to suddenly decide to stay. The only thing you can do, and the only thing you truly control, is returning to yourself. Invest in your work, your career, your personal goals, the ones you may have set aside for the relationship. Build a life you can be proud of, even if they are no longer in it. Stop analyzing every text. Stop rereading every punctuation mark, looking for hidden meaning. Stop waiting for their return. Every minute spent waiting is a minute lost from building the life you deserve. And when you truly do this, when you step out of the chase-abandon cycle, two things often happen. First, the avoidant may get triggered. They realize you are no longer someone they can take for granted. They may try to come back, drawn to your renewed independence and strength, even afraid of losing you. But second, and far more important, is that you may realize you no longer want them. When you genuinely reconnect with yourself, you see clearly that love should not be a painful pursuit. You deserve a healthy relationship where your emotional safety is not sacrificed just to keep someone around. And that is the real victory. Not when they return, but when you no longer need them to feel whole. The irony of every cycle with an avoidant is this: the moment you no longer need them is the moment they may start needing you. When you let go, when you focus on your own life, when you stop orbiting around their texts or gestures, that's when they realize your presence is no longer guaranteed. But by then, you will have discovered something deeper. What you truly need is not their return, but the return of yourself. Pause and ask yourself, are you in love with a person or addicted to the feeling of being chosen? Are you proving your worth to them or to the child inside you who still longs to be enough? The truth is, many people are not actually craving the avoidant partner themselves, but the validation they never received in childhood. This isn't just about romance, it's about roots. It's about attachment. It's about wounds that were never healed. As Bowlby, 1988, observed, attachment expectations are shaped in early life. If you experienced inconsistency, neglect, or emotional unavailability, you carry that hunger into adulthood. And when you meet an avoidant, that hunger is powerfully reactivated, pulling you into a spiral you can't seem to escape. But real love is not built on fear. It's not built on the fear of abandonment, the fear of not being enough, or the fear of losing validation. Mature love begins when you can stand steady, even if the other person walks away. And that is when you learn to love like someone with secure attachment, knowing when to stop when you're hurt, choosing kindness toward yourself, and remembering that you are worthy of a love that flows from maturity, not from panic.